Hello. Hello and welcome. Welcome to VegfestUK Trade Day at Summerfest Online. And thank you very much for joining us today. This is the first time that VegfestUK is hosting an online event. And it's quite an exciting prospect. And I'm extremely grateful for the large number of people who have put forward their offering of experience and knowledge of especially the vegan business world, the natural products world. And today we're joined by a number of experts and in extremely difficult times. And we're all aware that this era is, as we've heard that word many times, unprecedented. It's hit all of us in different ways, and it's only fair to pay attention to the fact that many of us in business are on their knees, some of us are out of business, and nearly all of us are facing a very, very challenging winter. A lot of very good people are going to be having a very tough time. And my warm wishes to everybody who's facing these times. And it's heartening when these tough times come that people will pull together. And it's great to see today so many people coming together. And again, I stress my gratitude for those who are bringing their experience and knowledge to the table for free, to share for free for a number of delegates and professionals who are attending today, not only from the UK, but of course now from outside of the UK and across the globe. And this is one of the tremendous benefits of the online option, is that it's free to attend, accessible, and available to people from across the globe. So it's a terrific opportunity we've got here. We're going to be doing more. We're going to be doing another one in London online in November, and a third Trade and Media Day in March in 2021. And so we're going to, build on this. So if you're attending, thank you very much for tuning in today and watching. If you're watching a bit later, thank you very much for watching. The show will stay open for another 30 days for people to access all the talks, and also, of course, to visit the all-important exhibitors. We had some truly fantastic exhibitors here today, and a compact and bijou selection. And my heartfelt gratitude to those that have put their faith in this event, come over and are representing at the very first VegfestUK online event. So thank you. And in particular, I want to say a massive thank you to our host today, not only for this panel, but also for the two opening panels on Saturday and Sunday. And that is, of course, our good friend here, Katrina Fox. Katrina has a string of accolades, and I know you know her well, otherwise you probably wouldn't have joined the panel. But Katrina, I do want to say thank you for bringing in not only such a fantastic selection of individuals today to share their expertise, but also for the two panels you brought in tomorrow and Sunday, the Vegan Women's Leadership Network, which was launched in lockdown and is a really fantastic initiative that I'm absolutely thrilled VegfestUK is partnering with. So, without further ado, I shall hand over now to Katrina Fox to host this panel at VegfestUK Trade Online 2020. Thank you very much, Katrina.
Oh, thank you so much, Tim, and a huge kudos to you and the VegFest team for pulling this together, because like you say, we are in unprecedented times. We're all having to learn new skills and to pivot, which is obviously the buzzword of 2020. So, huge kudos to you for doing that. It's a pleasure to be involved, and thank you to all our wonderful panelists who I'm going to introduce in just a moment, but thank you for that excellent introduction. So first, just a little bit of housekeeping. So for those of you watching, if you are watching live, then you do have the opportunity opportunity to ask questions. And I really encourage you to do that, because we've got some real leading lights of the vegan and plant-based industry here on this panel. So you do take advantage of that and ask questions. We'll check in. There is a Q&A function, and it depends on what device you're on. It could be located at the bottom of your screen if you're on a laptop, or it might be on the side if you're on a mobile or a tablet device. But look for the Q&A section where you can post your questions. And of course, if you're watching the recorded session, you won't be able to ask questions live, but we do have a chat room function directly after this, where some of our panelists will be joining us for a short time. But otherwise, I'm sure you're going to get great value from the conversation that we are about to have. So I am delighted to kick off the very first live stream panel for the Trade and Media Day, which is for manufacturers and suppliers. And as mentioned, we really have got some pioneers and some real leading people from various businesses within the vegan and plant-based sector. So I'm just going to do a brief intro of our panelists, and then we're going to get dug in to some of the issues and solutions and challenges, etc. So we have got Adrian Ling, who is the Managing Director of Plamil, which is the UK's oldest vegan company. I had the pleasure of meeting Adrian's father, Arthur, who went vegan in 1927. It still blows my mind when I say that and try to imagine someone being vegan back then. And Plamil produces a range of dairy-free goods, particularly chocolate. In fact, Adrian is the vegan Willy Wonka. He has his own chocolate factory, a vegan chocolate factory, where he makes Plamil's own brand and also makes chocolate and other products for other vegan brands as well. So welcome, Adrian. Delighted
to be with you today.
Have you here. Lovely. We've also got Tammy Fry. Tammy is the marketing director and part of the Fry Family Food Company, which is an international plant-based meat brand. I think recently joined the Live Kindly group, which is an umbrella group of other plant-based meat companies. And we'll find out a little bit more about that when we talk to Tammy, but great to have you here, Tammy. Welcome.
Thank you, Katrina. Thanks for having me.
We've also got Rimi and Meghna Patel, and they are from LoveRaw, which is a vegan confectionery and snack company. Now, some of you might recognize Rimi because she appeared on Dragon's Den, which is the UK, for our international visitors, that's the UK equivalent of Shark Tank. And Rimi famously turned down 2 offers on Dragon's Den because she wanted to wait for the right investor, and I believe that's now happened. And despite turning down that deal, the company has gone from strength to strength. So welcome, Rimi and Meghna.
Thank you, Katrina. Thanks for having us.
Pleasure. We've also got Joe Hill, who is one of the co-founders of One Planet Pizza. I think we were due to have Mike as well, but he had to do something, but we're delighted to have Joe here representing. And One Planet Pizza, a very exciting brand, a very fast growing frozen vegan pizza brand. And I believe the first of its kind in the UK. So great to have you guys here. And I'm looking at your thing behind, your poster behind you, and you're making me hungry, Joe, even though I've had my dinner. Great to have you here.
I'll cook up a pizza later as well, Katrina.
And now, of course, the vegan and plant-based sector is not only made up of just food. And so I'm really happy that we've got Laura Way, who's here representing vegan fashion. Laura is the founder of Votch, which is a wonderful vegan watch company that makes unisex styles for both men and women. So lovely to have you here, Laura.
Thanks, Katrina. Lovely to be here.
And finally, we have Sue Harrison, who's the head of sales at Mahi Naturals. We were due to have Meghna Patel, who is one of the founders, but unfortunately she had an issue come up at the last minute. But we're delighted to have Sue, who's the head of sales. And Mahi Naturals provides skincare, hair care and organic beauty products, which are sourced from across the globe. So welcome, Sue. Thank you for joining us at the last minute.
Thank you. Welcome.
Great. So as Tim mentioned, 2020, excuse me, has not turned out the way that any of us expected. I mean, none of us could predict what could happen, and it's really thrown society, businesses, people, etc., into a bit of a tailspin. So I'd love to talk to each of you to find out What impact has lockdown and the COVID-19 situation, what impact has that had on you as a manufacturer and supplier? And what have you had to do to survive? So I'm going to kick off with Adrian, because I know you've got a factory, you've got staff, you employ a lot of people. Tell us, how has the situation impacted you and what have you had to do to keep into business?
Well, I think one of the first things to remember is that when we entered the COVID situation, we didn't exactly go into it in a position of closed eyes, because if we're dealing with international companies and events, it was quite obvious what was going to happen into lockdown. And so for us, we had our first crisis meeting on the 9th of March, 2 weeks even before the date of lockdown. So we could see the writing on the wall, we could see what was going on. And I think it's important to keep up with these international events, because that does give you a head start. It does lead you. We had 2 weeks of actually preparation, to which we got well ahead with to start with. And so as a manufacturing business and being part of trade bodies, what became very, very clear very early on is that food manufacturing was going to be classed as essential workers. I think it was later described as key workers, but at the time it was called essential workers, and therefore manufacturing business could, if it was safe to do so, continue. And so that was the number one type of key bits of information that came along about where we were to go. So following that, we really had to decide where we were going to go, what we were going to do, because also I have to say the whole thing almost reminded me of the 9/11 type issue. But we have to take this as a long-term decision. This, whilst it's come along, why you say apparently sort of suddenly, well, you have to be prepared for all events. And so you have to take the long term. What are we going to do? What are we going to try and achieve? Do we lock down? Do we keep going? Do we shut down? Do we reopen? How do we continue? And it becomes apparent that, of course, our customers who are supplying into the food chain are carrying on. And therefore, to continue as a company, continue employment, what actually has to happen is the company has to continue producing to supply the people that we supply, so they're actually able to do so. And so all those sort of decisions have to be made in the long term, because if we don't continue to supply, what will happen is that actually if we stop, when we come back, if there's this sort of, and at the time there was this magical, well, it's all going to happen and it's going to come back and, we can get back to normal. I think it became very apparent very, very quickly, even in that 2 weeks, that new normal wasn't going to happen perhaps ever. And so to maintain jobs and to maintain production, it actually had to keep going. And that's the important thing, really, that we learned very, very early on, is assessing that we're part of the food chain, and that even though we're very proud to have vegan food, people who consume vegan foods have the equal right to their food chain supply as any other supplier. And so whilst there were some who were saying, oh, why is a vegan company staying open and all those sorts of things? Well, we're part of the food chain, and we should be supplying that. So it's a long-term issue, and we don't see that necessarily that we are even at the, in famous words, we're probably only at the end of the beginning. Yeah. And there's a long way to go. And as I say, if you looked at 9/11, everybody thought, okay, that's it. The impact is going to last for many, many years, and decisions have to be made very early on into the long-term future and the best way to carry on and to keep the jobs.
So did you have to do anything specific, Adrian? Did you or was it almost like business as usual for you? What did you have to do differently, if anything?
Well, in food manufacturing, of course, you're quite used to systems, and you're quite used to hygiene type ways of going about work. And so it was a very steep learning curve, obviously, to incorporate the COVID, the social distancing and all those sort of measures in place. And lots of other bits and pieces, such as a lot of the cleaning materials used have to be resistant and have to deal with the COVID rather than just any general bacteria, for instance. So there's a lot of technical issues going on. We had a lot of people working on it for a lot of those 2 weeks and after that, because, excuse me, looking back, we're all on this big steep learning curve, and even terminologies we use now were not being used at the time, back in late March. So we were doing a lot of work internally to ensure that not only could we could manufacture today and tomorrow, but we were starting to put things into place that would last for a long time. It was already clear to us, for instance, this was going to last way into the end of this year and not go away. So we needed to have a sustainable model rather than one that was just a temporary fix, and that is important. And we see some countries, the way they're dealing with it, have come into a lot of criticism, but it's a sustainable model rather than a knee-jerk model.
Nice, I like that. Thank you. So, Adrian, obviously your business has been around for a long time. So I'd like to go to Joe, because One Planet Pizza is a fairly new brand, a pizza brand. Tell us what's the situation been like for you in terms of the whole pandemic situation?
Yeah, similar points to Adrian, really, that we already had a lot of the systems in place being, we're SALSA accredited in the food industry, which allows us to sell to certain customers with their own standards. So we had those, hygiene and cleaning systems in place already, which were very, well suited and helped us reduce the risks of infection and keep the staff safe. As an FMCG, we were in a very lucky position, so that when we went into lockdown, most consumers straight away would rush to the supermarkets and panic buy and panic shop and stock up on frozen as much as anything. I guess Tammy maybe will echo this as well, that we actually found a real increase in sales, which was incredibly lucky considering everything else seemed to fall down around us in lockdown. We actually had a real spike in sales. I think that's partly as an FMCG. It's also frozen. It's a very fortunate position to be in, and pizza is quite a safe, reliable meal that people can stock up on, fill up their freezers, and it's there ready for them when they run out of their chilled or fresh produce. So yeah, it was a very interesting time for us. And again, as Adrian said, the sort of fear around the start of the pandemic was, are we going to be classed as key workers, or are we going to have to shut down our factory, which could, that as a young small business, that could be the end of us. It would be really hard to recover from a factory close. We've only got a relatively small team compared to some of the guys here. There's about 8 full-time kitchen staff, and we're much more of a family. My mum's the kitchen manager. Her best friend Tanner has been with us since we launched in 2016, and then her daughter works for us. So we're very tight-knit team, and me and Mike are with them every day. So for us, the biggest fear was having to make staff redundant, or closing the factory altogether. So we've been really lucky and incredibly grateful that we're in a good position with frozen pizza, that sales increased and we were able to actually give the staff more hours, and whilst trying to keep them safe with all the systems in place.
Fantastic. I love that. Yeah, we've seen various reports. Actually, it's been quite heartening to see, particularly sales of vegan products, plant-based meat products have been going up, which is great. So let's go to Tammy. Interesting, because I think what's interesting, I noticed with Tammy, with everybody else, you've all got e-commerce models, so people can buy your products directly. Whereas with Fry's, you haven't got that. People can only get them from retailers and supermarkets. So I don't know if that's had any kind of impact, but talk to us. Does what Adrian and Joe have said, does that resonate, or what's been the situation with Fry's?
Yeah, I mean, to echo what Adrian said, we obviously produce in South Africa, and we do have 400 staff. And we had probably one of the strictest lockdowns worldwide in South Africa. We had level 5 lockdown in March, which ran for about, I would say, 5 weeks. We now at level 3, which has still a lot of limitations. It's very difficult in South Africa at the moment.
Tammy, when you say level 5, so what was happening in level 5? Did you have to shut the factory down? Did you have to lay off staff? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, well, to echo Adrian's words, you know, we were an essential service by the South African government. So even in level 5 lockdown, we were bringing staff to the factory, and you know, these staff don't have means to get to the factory that easily. So it was organizing public transport, maintaining social distancing with public transport. So there were some challenges, but every staff member had to be issued with a certificate that would allow them to come to and from work, because there were police on the road monitoring that. So there were challenges, but because we were an essential service, we were allowed to continue operation, which was great, because when so many people weren't working, our staff were really, you know, fortunate and happy to be able to continue working, especially in an economy like South Africa, where you have such high unemployment rates already. So one staff member might be a breadwinner for 11 or 12 people. So it's critical that they continue working and supporting their family. Other than that, I mean, yeah, like Joe said, in all this chaos and unprecedented time and newness of operation, we had such an incredible increase in demand. I mean, in South Africa, in March, April, and May, we had a 75%, 103%, and 59% higher sales consecutively than last year over the same period. So a tremendous increase in demand, which was awesome. But then there were the challenges of getting raw materials. We had our rand, which was depreciating quite badly at the start of the crisis, and hasn't recovered. So we are importing a lot of our raw materials, and that's been challenging, you know, because it's affected the pricing of the products.
So they've been more expensive, right? And what about in terms of, so you mentioned the demand in South Africa. Can you say anything about the demand, for example, in the UK and other places?
Yeah, I mean, so everywhere we saw similar growth everywhere. About 50% in the UK, about 40% in Australia. Quite a lot of out of stocks in Australia, unfortunately. We're trying to find our feet again. We do have a new facility which is coming online, which will treble our output, and that facility will come online in October, so will help us deal with that demand. But yeah, there's been a lot going on at Fry's since March, that's for sure.
Sounds like it, yeah. It's heartening to hear, though, certainly, and I know we're going to get on to some of the others who are in the non-food-based space, but great to hear that, you know, demand and sales have been up for vegan and plant-based products. I think that's really heartening. So Rimi and Meghna, so I get some sort of similar, I guess some of your products are similar to Adrian in that they're confectionery type snack products. Can you talk to us, and I believe you don't manufacture them yourselves, but you use a manufacturing facility. So can you talk to us a little bit about what happened there and how that impacted, how the whole COVID situation has impacted your business?
Yeah, sure. I think very similar to Adrian, we were seeing what was happening internationally, and we sort of had a meeting a couple of weeks before and said, look, if it goes in UK, looks like it will go into lockdown, it will need to, and so we basically made a lot of stock in March. Because we thought because we don't own the factory, it could shut down if there was a breakout. We didn't know what the regulations were going to be. So we made a lot of stock for about 2-3 months, buffer stock, just in case. That was the first thing that we did. And I think a week before we had a meeting and we've decided that everybody was going to work from home. So we sent everybody with their computers, and everything we've set up is cloud-based anyway. So it was very easy to start working the next day, take your computer home. And we came back, and then we were just on Google Hangouts, and meetings and chatting and stuff like that. But, you know, we did have to re-strategize the business because we did have a very good March, April. But we noticed that, you know, supermarkets, it was going down a bit because food to go, people weren't buying lunches and stuff. So we ended up shifting very much online. You know, we sort of changed the business, changed a couple of roles temporarily. And I think, well, we used to do about 1 order a day in February. And I think it peaked to about 200 orders a day.
Wow. From your website. So direct to customers from your website.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
wow.
we really went big on online. And we thought, you know what, it's an opportunity now for us to sort of grow our awareness of the brand, you know, because we didn't know what was going to happen. We're in a bit of grocery, we're in a lot of the independent health food shops, and we weren't sure how it was going to go. And then I think it was a good decision to make on the short-term basis for LoveRaw to focus on online. And then, you know, and then we're seeing now after a few months, Waitrose, etc., the orders are starting to increase again. I think, you know, chocolate wasn't a necessity product like the toilet roll or frozen food. So it was a bit interesting to see. It declined in stores but increased online.
Yeah, and consumer behavior, you know, everybody went into panic, and they were initially kind of buying the kind of dried stocks such as, you know, sauces and pasta. And then it kind of went in phases. So when they had enough of this, then it went on to, you know, biscuits and, you know, confectionery. And then it kind of, you know, stabilized a little bit. So it was almost, they prioritized what they needed the most and then stocked up on this. And then what they felt they, you know, could, you know, wait on, you know, such as, you know, luxury items, such as confectionery. I know with some people it's a necessity. With some
I was going to say, I bet there's some people watching going, no, chocolate's definitely a necessity.
Luxury, you know, in comparison to, you know, dried goods. So we saw the kind of demand shift in those phases. And then, you know, as Marv mentioned, you know, as a brand, we've always said, you know, we belong in the impulse aisle, in the food to go. So, you know, we didn't really want to be placed in free from. And as buyers' requirements, you know, are changing as well. So, you know, we've really worked hard to get into certain bays such as food to go. And then with you know, with COVID, with offices, you know, closing down and, you know, the footfall decreasing, I guess the free from aisle was more, you know, prevalent rather than the food to go. And the food to go and the impulse, they had a huge drop. I think, you know, with one multiple, you know, 60% down. Wow. So I guess we were affected in those terms.
But if I was going to look for a positive that came out of everything, we've hired people during the lockdown. And, you know, we've hired some people very recently. And I've noticed that with a lot of people applying for jobs, they've had time to reflect on where they're working, what type of business they want, and what type of impact they want to have on the world or their family or whatever it is. So, you know, we've made some really great hires recently because people have decided to, you know, want a change in career, you know, if they're lucky to have that and they really want to make an impact. So, you know, it's very interesting times.
And it was very much kind of, we continue. I mean, it was hard work trying to continue at home with the kids, and we had new hires that were onboarded virtually, you know, so and they came on board and now they're in the office with us. So you know, it was hard work. I guess Marv was there daily, you know, keeping everybody's spirits motivated up and keeping them motivated.
And everybody was good. The team didn't down tools or anything, so we were very lucky.
Fantastic. You mentioned about the impulse section that kind of went down. So were you able to switch your products back into the free from aisle then, or does it not happen that quickly?
No, it doesn't happen that quickly, but it's made us think about our strategy and, you know,
gotcha.
Forward, because if people are working from home, we found in our building, there's about 20 offices, 20 companies, but only 3 are back. The rest aren't coming back till January. So if you go to Boots and their food to go is dead, there's nothing there. So we've had to do a bit of re-strategizing and looking about where we sit going forward, and hopefully there'll be some changes.
Gotcha, lovely. Thank you for sharing that. So we've gone through some of the food businesses. So I'd like to go to Sue next, because now obviously your company you sell hair care, skin care, personal care. So those are still pretty much essential items. Obviously yours are, they're not just the kind of cheap and nasties with all the chemicals. They're natural. They're organic. So I'm curious, how did the COVID situation, how has that impacted your business and the sales?
Okay, well, basically, when it all started kicking off, we noticed that there was a sudden spike in sales. And we think this is very much to do with a little bit of panic buying in a way, both with consumers and with our retail stockists. And normally where somebody would perhaps go in and buy one tube of our Hopes Relief Intensive Rescue Cream, they were buying 2 or 3. So in the beginning of this, our sales rocketed, and as a result we went out of stock of a few of the lines, but we managed to very quickly replenish these. We also noticed that our freight costs suddenly went up, and we've absorbed these, so we didn't pass them on at all to any of our customers.
Wow. Okay. So when you say, because I noticed you say you import like some of your products from across the globe, and obviously, there were situations were different in different countries in terms of the COVID-19. So you said you were able to easily replenish. So were you able to easily replenish those same products, or did you have to kind of look elsewhere for kind of replacements, and did you find that it took longer for things to come in as well?
We managed to find different ways of getting the products here. So like, for instance, one of the airlines that we were using, they suddenly were grounded, and we had to very quickly source another way of bringing it over with a different airline. So we had issues like that, but we managed to remedy them with a lot of hard work behind the scenes.
Gotcha. Now you mentioned Rimi and Manaf mentioned that their e-commerce sales skyrocketed compared to the retail sales. Did you find that with yours, or how did that compare, the e-commerce versus your products being sold in retailers?
I think when people were literally panic buying and stocking up, we had a massive growth in sales. It then went very much quieter when there was this risk of whether health food stores were going to remain open as essential businesses or not. And when it was announced, again, the sales started going up. So year on year, we've had big growth, both directly into our stores, but also with our e-commerce that we stock for other people's e-commerce and our own e-commerce. A lot of these independent retailers weren't really focusing very much on their e-commerce. So we had to give a little gentle nudge and persuasion about how important it is that you've got to find other ways of selling these products and getting it out to the consumer. So we encourage them to use their social media a lot more. Even some of them are launching their own websites, which isn't a very quick and easy thing to do. But we literally had it happening on all different platforms all at once.
Wow, certainly a busy time. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to go to Laura, because I think out of all our panelists, we can't really argue that a vegan watch is a necessary item. I mean, yours is it's a fashion item. It's they're amazing. They're beautiful quality. We've got one. My partner Tracy's got one. They are a luxury, a nice to have. So I'm really curious, how has this whole situation affected Votch?
Yeah, of course. Well, we were naturally, going on what you've just said, very, very nervous in the beginning. We work out of Asia, so we were obviously seeing the situation as it unfolded firsthand there. And also just the week prior to going lockdown, we'd secured investment, which was really great and really exciting for us. And then the next week later, we were in lockdown with a 2-year-old and no childcare. So we had to really focus in and really strategize as to how we were going to make this work. Also, our fulfillment centres based here in the UK. We weren't sure, because obviously we don't run and manage the fulfillment centre, if they were going to stay open, if they were going to close. They chose to remain open, which was great, so we could still ship orders. We saw a little a little delay in parcels and shipping going to customers, but other than that, customers were aware of, you know, the situation and really, you know, sympathetic to the situation. But sales overall over that whole period have been up 60% this year than last year.
Wow.
We invested a lot more into online marketing. Because obviously we knew people were at home scrolling, looking, and we could target customers that way. We appointed a new digital media agency, re-strategized, really worked on our key messaging, and also, even though watches aren't an essential item, they are quite a key gifting item. So where people couldn't obviously be with loved ones, etc., we were able to include like personalized notes, etc. So that was a really nice touch that we were able to include for our customers. So on the whole, it's really just allowed us to kind of focus and where we're going to go next and the next level, because I think, you know, this is the beginning of, you know, a long process, and we really need to diversify, re-strategize, and make sure we're bringing out products that are going to suit us for the longer term now, that isn't necessarily just watches. So we are having a lot of consideration now on what our future offering is going to be in this time. But overall, you know, we're surviving and it's doing okay. The team's growing. Most of my team work from home anyway. Quite big in hiring mums in the workplace to allow them for flexible hours from working from home. So yeah, everyone's just really kind of helping each other out and watching, just supporting each other. But we have placed an order way more in advance than we would usually do for the Christmas period, because for example, plating factories were closed down, a huge amount of plating factories are shut down, and some factories aren't over in Shenzhen where we manufacture have reopened, or they're asking for bigger upfront payments on initial orders because so many of their orders have been cancelled. But fortunately, we've been quite lucky. Our factory's still going, still functioning. So yeah, I feel like we've survived so far, and hoping to do so for the remaining period of this.
Yeah, wow, I love that. I must say I'm very heartened by particularly this panel. I was wondering if we were going to get any horror stories, but it's all been really quite positive. I'm curious what you said though, Laurie. You said that one of your factories chose to remain open. I find that interesting. The only reason I say that is my partner Tracy likes to dance, and she likes to have vegan point shoes. So she's been getting them from like Gaynor Minden, and there's another brand, a Russian brand that do Grishka, that do vegan shoes. All their factories, because they were based, like some of them were in Italy and Europe, like they just closed, like they had to close, and they're not opening. So it's kind of interesting that I'm curious that yours were able to choose to stay open, because I know with the others they were classed as essential, like the food ones. How did that?
No, factories had to close. So factories were closed because in Asia, it was our fulfillment center here. They're the ones, because they were shipping, they were classed as being able to still stay open.
Okay, gotcha.
Government guidelines here saying that they had to close. So it was in their hands. We were all ready to go up and go and collect all the stock and bring it all back to home and ship from here. But they were able to remain under the government guidelines. So
what impact did the factory closing have? Did that have any impact, the fact that the factory had to close for a while?
We're out of stock of some of our best sellers. We have been. We also kind of coincided with a sale and free strap orders to kind of try and, you know, increase our offering and increase sales during this time. So some of our best sellers have been out of stock. That's been unavoidable, and that's the situation. But we've just been really kind of hands-on. One of our teams will make up the watches by hand. We'll send components, and we'll jiggle bits around, we'll move buckles and move straps and do what we've got to do to make sure that what we can sell can be selling. So
brilliant. I love that. Fantastic. So thank you all for sharing that, the kind of the general sort of overview of how COVID-19 has impacted your businesses. I'm curious about what's been the impact on, and I know one or two of you have touched on this, what's been the impact on new product development? Like, has that been put on hold, and was it a case of just trying to kind of get existing stock out the door to kind of keep sales in? So I'm just curious about new product development. Let's go back to Adrian.
Well, new product development has been something that we've been forging ahead with, and parts of we have two new ranges coming out. One of them was halfway through development, and the other one was bubbling under the surface. So we were actually able to do quite a lot of product development, because of course a lot of the time product development is time of thought, as well as experimentations and all those type of things. And so there is this delicate balance of what can we do where can we go? But we're very excited. We will be launching a new range in September that's coming out, and everything is all the packaging has been done, and it's all paper packaging of chocolate, which is absolutely fantastic. You know, zero plastic, because this is plastic is still a big issue, and there are lots of issues where COVID has taken over that will remain for a longer time than COVID, such as plastic. So that is one line we've been looking at, and another line which will be coming out early next year. So actually the product development has gone unabated. So we're pleased that really that hasn't affected us at all, the COVID situation, because in a sense it has almost given us more breathing space to develop those ones that were bubbling under the surface. But I think what really happens now is analysing where the market is going to go, because clearly, as we've heard, you know, the food to go sector is suffered quite substantially, and there's lots of market areas. So to develop a product that specifically goes into one market area could be a mistake, because you never know when that is going to be taken from under you in a sense. So to really look at long-term strategies to develop products, but maybe also long-term strategies to take some products out of the range, because in manufacturing you have to become leaner and more efficient. So the demands there because the costs of manufacturing have gone up substantially because of all the extra things. So you're looking also to maybe take out a few of the range and replace them with a few others. So it becomes a long-term strategy rather than just, well, what else can we do? What new products can be done? And we think that's important. How people are going to be eating at home, you know, how they're going to be snacking? Are they going to be sharing? Are they going to be indulgent moments? What are the essential foods going to be? How they're going to be viewed? What are the flavours coming along? And there's a number of flavours that have been bubbling under the surface as well. So they're all ones to look at. So in all the COVID situation, I think has been a neutral on existing product development, but does change the medium and long-term look into what is required, what is needed. And we're actually pleased. We were working with 2 or 3 other companies in lockdown to actually have products that were going to be launched maybe at the end of this year. Now they're going to be launched next year, for instance. So that has taken time, but that gives a longer development. And just so that longer lead times are needed. We're lucky we've even gained some brand new customers come to us over this time with some new products on short-term development. They've said, can you produce this in this format or that format? And we've been actually able to do that for them in lockdown and supply a product. So that is really, really good. So that just shows that while lockdown has happened, that there are opportunities to be had. I'm glad to say we've taken advantage of all those opportunities, because while some people we supply have literally sort of halved or quartered, others have doubled and trebled. So it is a swings and balances, and it's part of our long-term strategy. A good vegan term: don't put all your eggs in one basket. Really, have a diverse business. You know, I don't know what the vegan term is for that.
Maybe I've been saying avocados. Don't put all your avocados in basket.
So really, the strategy is not to have a concentration of your sales, but to have a little bit here, have a product there, have a little bit there. And in that way, you have a diverse business, which is we have learned from being the original vegan company and going through all the times where vegan products weren't on the shelf, is to be diverse, to not be selling solely one thing or another, but try and do a whole range of different products. And because you never know what's around the corner, you never know when the next storm is going to come, and that's part of our strategy in the long term, and it has been part of our strategy that we've really learnt, and why I think we've been quite resilient over the COVID times is because, you know, plan for the rainy day. You never know when it's going to happen, and you know, and it happened quite heavily, didn't it? It rained
certainly
badly.
did. It poured.
You know, so but be prepared for these times. Don't always assume tomorrow is going to be exactly the same as today. And I think that's probably a big take home. We need to all learn, really, and we're just starting that process as much as anybody, and that goes in for our long-term product development.
Yeah, I think that's good to hear, especially from such a business that's been around for so long, such as yours, is that you were pioneers, and at one point you probably were like almost the only vegan chocolate brand at one point, but you've obviously seen so much change. I mean, you have to constantly kind of keep changing and diversifying. So I think that's really great advice. Joe, as a frozen pizza brand, you've got some amazing products on there. I was having a look before we came on. Again, it's making me hungry. I'm like, I want one of these, but you can't ship them all the way over here yet. How has that been in terms of new product development for you? Did you kind of already like have a certain amount and you're kind of like, okay, we're just going to stick with that, or have you been working on new product development at all?
Yeah, it's actually been a really exciting space for us, the MPD side. So we've never been known particularly well for MPD. We've just had the 4 core flavors, and the last 4 or 5 years has been all about brand awareness, getting into some of the multiples, some of the retailers, and just improving those 4 pizzas, making sure they're as strong as they can be. But Mike had some brilliant foresight, which he never lets me forget. And he actually, he encouraged us to launch our D2C website and do a total rebuild of that, and offer nationwide home delivery. And it was the UK's first ever nationwide home delivery service of frozen plant-based pizza, and so that was really exciting and pioneering stuff, and that's now our whole website is based around this e-commerce platform. So you can now order our pizzas and have them delivered sustainably in recycled compostable packaging, and they'll arrive at your door frozen, and that's anywhere in the UK. And I wasn't too excited about that back in January, because I wanted to focus on getting into Waitrose or Sainsbury's, getting into more wholesalers and food service. And Mike was always pushing. He had this feeling, it was really interesting, that we should get online and everything's going digital. And then it just so happens that, soon after, when we weren't really giving it much attention, we'd got the website ready, and we were sort of putting maybe 10% of our time into it. Obviously, we started hearing about lockdown happening and everything else. And it was just perfect that we had that head start. So we suddenly put about 50% of our time and energy and spend into the website. We created this whole platform where you could personalize your pizzas. You could choose your base, choose your flavors. We created a few new flavors, which we'd been working on for about a year, but hadn't had an opportunity to sell them. So yeah, we launched that in January, and it was perfect timing for lockdown. It's been really successful and really good fun, because we've been able to then, directly engage with our customers rather than go through various channels, wholesale, retail, where we don't have that really great relationship with them. And we're very much a sort of purpose-driven brand with a really nice story. So being able to engage directly with customers and, respond to what flavors they're asking for, and do really brilliant collaborations. That's been a really exciting space for us. So sorry, I disappeared because I wanted to grab the OPP Direct box for you guys. So it has a cardboard, recycled cardboard is the insulation that goes inside. Then we use a little bit of dry ice, but it's not really been done at all before. And we've only found one other company that's ever done it in Europe, that you can have frozen pizzas delivered to your door. So that's been really exciting. And then on top of that, we launched a really big collaboration with Meatless Farm. So sorry if that's reversed, but this was we now think this is our best ever pizza, which is the cheeseburger pizza. And this is a big partnership with the Meatless Farm Co. We use their burger chunks alongside lots of other toppings that you would expect to find on a cheeseburger. And again, that's never been done before in the vegan world. So that's quite exciting that we were the first to do that. And you can now get that anywhere in the UK. We're just about to launch it on the Vegan Kind, and we're trying to get it listed with one of the multiples as well through the Meatless Farm, because they're a little bit bigger than us and they can help us get a foot in the door. So yeah, MPD has been really exciting. and we've just launched a Mexicana, which is in collaboration with the guys over at Northland, who are one of the biggest dairy cheese companies in the UK. So we're trying to help them go more plant-based. So that's sort of part of our mission as well, is teaming up with bigger non-vegan brands and saying, well, actually, this is a really fast-growing, exciting area in the food industry, and we'll help you guys get in there, and let's do some exciting flavors and encourage them to do more brilliant vegan foods.
Wonderful. I love that. I love hearing about this innovation. That actually leads me nicely on to Tammy, because curious about, obviously, about new product development in regards to fries, but also I know you and I have talked, because Tammy and I are friends. I know we've talked about how, you know, being an independent family brand for so long, there was only so far you could get, and then these big corporates are coming in. So you actually joined the Live Kindly group, which is an umbrella group of other plant-based meat companies. So is there anything you can say about how has that helped fries in terms of being able to broaden out, you know, get to a bigger market, and also around potential new product development?
Yeah, thanks, Katrina. You know, we also I guess we're one of the pioneers in the plant-based meat sectors, because we were founded in 1991 in South Africa, where I don't think there were any vegans in South Africa at the time, maybe a handful. While he contacted the Vegetarian Society back in 1991, and there were 10 members of the Vegetarian Society. So definitely a company born out of purpose and passion, and really just actually trying to answer or give ourselves a solution, because we were plant-based. And so that's how it all started. What happens with these older companies is you develop a range that people really enjoy, and then as technologies advance, you want to launch new products, but then people are still loving the old products, so you end up with more and more product SKUs. And we now have a portfolio of over 50 different plant-based meats, and as Adrian says, you have to sometimes cut the older ones, despite the fact that people are still enjoying them, but because, you know, you have to bring new technologies to market, because if you want to compete and you want flexitarians to move into the space, and you want to compete with some of the biggest corporate companies that are all entering the space at unprecedented rates, with huge wallets, you know, you have to make some tough decisions. And I think for us, you know, as a family, we knew how to make so many incredible products, so many very advanced technology products, because we'd had 30 years of experience, and we wanted to bring these products to market. But the capital investments for the size of company that we had become, you know, we now supply 28 countries worldwide, and over 25,000 outlets that stock our products. So to now have the capital just as a family was becoming more and more challenging, and we made that decision to join with Live Kindly, and have access to that capital. And you know, there were a lot of corporates that did, very big corporates that knocked on our door, and we just needed to find people that were value aligned. And that's the great thing about the Live Kindly collective, is it's a collective of only plant-based, 100% plant-based brands. So when we have discussions, we are all 100% aligned, and we share the same value system, we share the same purpose. So that made it easier for us to take that next step as a family. And yeah, as far as as NPD goes, we now are so excited, because we're bringing new alternative proteins to market. We have we are now able to invest in that machinery and equipment to produce those products that we had been dreaming about being able to produce and take to market. And so you're going to see some very incredible, awesome, innovative products coming from Fry's over the next 6 months. One of our very most recent launches was the Big Fry Burger, which my son thinks that he named, actually, so he's claiming it. And it's doing incredibly well wherever it's been launched. It's a raw.
And that's a frozen product. Tammy, is
frozen or chilled, ideally chilled, but it is being sold in some regions where the chill is not an option for it to be sold. For example, in South Africa, that market, that the chilled plant-based market's not established enough, so it's being sold in the freezer, but it is a raw product, so it requires a little more cooking. It gives that whole meat experience. You know, it's got that red. You want to say it bleeds. It doesn't. It's not a bleeding burger, but it looks like a raw burger, which sizzles and has, you know, 20 grams of protein per patty. And one of the things we're really proud of is that when we produce products, we have almost no additives. So when we do comparisons across all different meat analogs, fries is probably one of the cleanest meat alternatives on the market. And I think that's because, you know, we eat our products every day, and my children eat our products. And so we choose our ingredients very carefully, because when you're eating it, you want to know that you're eating good food. So it's very important to us as a family. So yeah, I think that's where we are as far as NPD goes. I'm super excited for everyone to see what we've been up to, and since we joined Live Kindly, and we have all that new energy, and it's an awesome time ahead for us, I think. I hope.
I love that. I'm loving all the collaborations. I think it's so important. And I think, you know, for mission-driven businesses, you know, because we're more than just about making sales. Of course, we want to make sales, make a profit to be sustainable. But I love that we're on that broader mission. And when we come together, so much can be achieved. So I hope that's really inspiring for people watching, which is wonderful. Rimi and Manav, did you want to say anything at all about, I know you've talked a little bit about how you pivoted, anything around new product development on your front, or how it's been impacted?
Yeah, I mean, we did launch a product in March, just before COVID and lockdown hit, and you know, we put everything in place to, you know, do a big launch, and then COVID hit. So I guess in that terms, it was unfortunate for us, because I guess, again, consumer behavior, consumers wanted to buy something that they know and that they're familiar with. So the new product that we had launched, you know, did have a low rate of sale. And, you know, we almost have to relaunch that again in the coming months, because we don't feel it had that opportunity to launch as well as it could have. We were working on a new product to launch in May, around May. And, you know, we can do so much our side and move forward with it. But then we had limitations of factories and, you know, they closing down, and, you know, maybe they weren't open for a few weeks. And so it was just waiting on kind of, you know, other parts of the business, you know, that was holding us back. But we are going ahead and launching in September. And, you know, it resonated a lot with what Adrian was saying, you know, just diversifying. And whereas before, I think you know, you always think by getting into the multiples, you'll have that kind of high rate of sale. But I think, you know, you've got various elements where you can sell, you know, out of home and convenience and D2C and the multiples. So I think it is about just diversifying across all of those channels.
And do you want to tell the product? It's the 1st of September, but it's a world first in vegan chocolate.
Oh,
so
Adrian, you've got competition. What is it?
It's very innovative. It's very innovative. We've had a fantastic feedback from buyers, and yeah, we're going to be kind of hitting stores in September.
So you can't say what is it, top secret at the moment? You can't tell us what it is. Give us a clue.
Everybody. So
but I keep saying no, 1st of September.
Yeah.
When
1st of September. Okay, we'll keep an eye out. Well, we're looking forward to that. Brilliant. Laura, I know you briefly did touch on new product development. You said you were kind of getting quite creative because of the factories closing down. Is there anything you wanted to add just on new product development? Thank you, Rimi.
I think the vegan fashion space, despite COVID, is still growing massively. I mean, the vegan leather market set to take over the animal-based leather market by 2025. So there's such a big space for us there to work with.
I love that.
Really, really exciting. And it's not, when we first launched 4 years ago, it was very much about vegan fashion, but obviously it's all about sustainability now as well. And there are so many new materials coming out, incorporating bio-waste like cactus and apple, etc. So we're doing a lot of innovation and experimenting here. And yeah, we're launching a completely new product, hopefully in the next 2 months to hit the Christmas market. But we're really diversifying into other accessories, and that's what COVID's kind of given us. And with our investment and trying all these new materials, a real scope to really branch out on our current offering. So yeah, it's a really exciting time for us to.
Wonderful. Silver linings, I'm loving them. Sue, I don't know, I'm not sure if Mahi Naturals, do you actually make any of your own products, or is new product development, is that applicable to your business, or is it more you're kind of working with other brands to sell their new products? Is there anything you want to add on new product development?
Yes, we actually do have one of our very own brands, which is called Skinworks. This is a superfood facial oil for the skin. So we do have that as our own brand, but we've got quite a diverse portfolio of brands, going from oral dental care, which is Woo Bamboo. We've got Crazy Rumour lip balms, which are 100% natural and vegan. These are very good at the moment because obviously people are wearing masks, are getting dry lips. So this is a very good seller. Hope's Relief, again, which is natural skincare. We've also got BioCap, which is a vegan rapid home hair colour brand. So this is one of our highly topical brands. Our other highly topical brand, again, is going to be Hope's Relief. We also have Imani vegan cosmetics. A lot of people are buying products perhaps to try that they've never tried before. So we've diversed a little bit more, and we've actually launched 2 brands in July, which is incredible. One of these is JR Liggett's, which is a solid shampoo bar range, and the other one is Bass Brushes. These are amazing. They're a range of bamboo brushes and biodegradable. So we've literally got a diverse range from oral to hair to skincare to makeup. Yeah, so NPD, as far as that goes, is us sourcing new brands, very much to build on our portfolio. So we've taken advantage of the time and done this as well.
Lovely. So I'm hearing a lot of diversification is really coming from all of us, which is wonderful. Before I carry on with any more questions, I know we have got an audience question, so I'm just going to read that out. So it's from Humane Wildlife Solutions. I know you guys. It says, "Hi Katrina, hope you're well. Thank you. Still honoured to have been part of your Vegan Ventures book." Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. He says, "My question is, so this is to the panels, do all your businesses find it hard to overcome wildlife conflicts, otherwise known in the real world as pest control, when they arise, and have you seen a rise in cases over lockdown?" Who'd like to start with that? You can just raise your hand and we can unmute anyone.
Shall I start with that?
Adrian, yeah, go for it.
I think one of the biggest things about pest control is prevention. And if you're talking about anything such as pests and controlling them, what you've actually done is lost the battle to start with, and what you really need to be doing is looking at the environment the site is on and preventing things coming in, for instance. And it's a lesson I think any pest control contractor will tell you is your biggest defense is prevention. And so that is going to be a big part of whatever you do. We actually, in the middle of lockdown, are looking to demolish a building. And very interestingly enough, what happens is a bat survey is required for that. And people come along and do a bat survey and see all the type of wildlife. And actually, there were 4 guys there, and they said, "Do you know what? This has been one of the most boring nights ever. We haven't seen anything." And that's partly because, it's about preventing things rather than having to control them. And I think that's the big lesson that everybody has. So I think there is a conflict but the conflict is well, keep the door shut to start with.
Got it. Thank you. Anyone else like to chime in on that? Joe, anything to add on that?
I haven't got too many interesting things to say about that, I'm afraid. No, we've always been quite lucky. We had a purpose-built kitchen just behind our office here. The worst we've ever had is now we've got a wasp's nest, but that keeps away any unwanted guests, and that's not much of a problem. We don't have to, they're not coming into the kitchen area to the high-risk areas. They're just outside. That's about as much activity as we've had out here.
Right. Tammy, any thoughts on that? Because obviously, given you've got your factory in South Africa, are there any issues around that?
Well, we have a purpose-built food factory, and anyone who runs a food factory will understand that, you know, there's no windows. It's a very sanitized environment. There's no pests going to get in there at all. So there's no openings for animals or creatures to enter the facility. The only way they would come in is with raw materials, and that's you know, of course, before all raw materials are inspected before they even enter into the raw material holding facility. So you shouldn't, you know, inside a food factory, you should not have pests, as Adrian said. If you do, you've already lost the battle, and you probably don't have a food safe factory in the first place. So nobody wants to find a fly in their fries burger, I can promise you.
Yeah, very true, very true, especially the vegans. But yeah, absolutely. Well, that's good to hear. So I hope that's answered your question, Kevin. Thank you for that. It's great to hear from you. Thank you for your question. And again, if anyone else has got any questions, do type them into the Q&A panel. We've got probably around about another 20 minutes or so, so we'll keep an eye out. If you've got questions, do put them in, and I'm happy to open that up to our panel. So in the meantime, so just wanted to talk about, I know some of you, particularly those of you who deal with wholesalers, distributors and retailers, I'm wondering whether, because typically we know that the margins are often tight, you know, and particularly when it comes to the big supermarket chains, you know, they can kind of squeeze, you know, independent brands in terms of the profit margins, etc. I'm wondering whether you've seen any kind of difference in your relationships between those parties, given the COVID-19 situation. Like, have they sort of made any concessions or in any way, or given you any benefits in any way at all? Who'd like to kick off with that? Tammy, I know you deal with big supermarkets. Maybe we'll start with you on this one.
Well, you know, Katrina, because the plant-based space is such an active space at the moment, I think at the end of the day, retailers exist for primarily one thing, and that's money. And you can't, you know, no one can eat an empty shelf. So if you can't supply, and there are 10, 15, maybe 20 or even 30 brands lined up that can supply, the retailer is likely to just shift to another brand, even though you've had a long-term relationship with them. So it's a very hard environment to be a part of, and you just have to keep supplying. There's no real excuses. It doesn't matter what excuse you have, because there's another brand that doesn't have the same excuse as you do. So it is tricky. You've got to make sure that you've planned for everything, and you make sure that you've got stock and you've got holding stock, and you're ready to have continuous supply. There's not. I don't know if anyone else has any other experience, but mainstream retail is a tough. Independent might be completely different, but for sure, mainstream retail, and of course at the moment food service is almost non-existent. So we've had almost, you know, we've lost maybe 90% of sales in food service because restaurants and quick service restaurants are all closed. So that's our experience, and I don't know if anyone else has had a different experience.
Rimi and Manav, I believe you're stocked in some of the bigger chains. Anything you'd like to say on that?
Yeah, I guess initially the buyers, they were so inundated with their categories and even sharing other categories, covering on behalf of their colleagues. So it's almost like I didn't want to bother them too much because I know that they had a lot on, you know, in the first couple of months. But then, you know, from end of April, you know, May onwards, I think they were more receptive, because as, you know, things kind of unfold in the multiples, they still want to have new products coming up, and so, you know, they were more kind of open to, you know, listening, you know, to what we have to offer. But with distributors,
sorry, go on. Oh yeah, with distributors, they were a lot more flexible and understanding. But from conversations that Rimi was having with buyers and stuff like that in the supermarkets, they're still they haven't changed. They're the same as Tammy has said. They haven't reflected on anything on how they deal with you. Their attitude's still very the same, very cutthroat, blunt, and direct, and high expectations. You know, so I think that's what I found from speaking to some of them.
Yeah.
And some of them were furloughed as well, but they didn't tell you. That was very interesting. You could tell.
Yeah. You could tell because they just in such a long time.
Annually. So it was just, I think they're still the same. The main buyers, retail buyers, Boots, Holland & Barrett, etc.
And then it varies, you know, with the distributors. You know, we supply quite a lot of independents too, but you know, they were supportive. You know, it was positive and they kept open, so it was very different. And as you were saying on the food service, that literally just collapsed overnight.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think we need to remember that of course all the food businesses are all having their own individual problems of distribution and supply. So there were people on furloughs, there were people not working from home, and we all had to recognise that they were all struggling themselves in doing what they normally do and coming to going forward. So we recognise that you know, there will be different strategies with different buyers and different companies, and I think it was an interesting time to see how different companies reacted, and a learning experience for everybody in dealing with them. I think from us, one of the strangest things was having online Zoom audits by customers.
Oh, really?
Things that were really, really different, where normally people would come to site and audit you. They would do everything by Zoom and things like that. So that was really, really different from dealing with buyers and companies.
Indeed, thank you. Now we've got a couple of audience questions. So I hope I can pronounce that right. Mahesh and Nishma, of Shamboos, hello. They've asking, have you made any special preparations or provisions given the anticipated long-term deep recession? I know, Adrian, you touched on that a little bit earlier about long-term strategies, but would anyone else like to chime in on that in terms of, because we are living, it is very uncertain. I mean, yes, we've had a lockdown, but now, you know, there's potential second, maybe third, we really don't know where we're going. So any of you want to touch on that, on any of the plans you're making? Joe, you just need to unmute yourself.
I know, I don't want to make that mistake. No one's done it yet. I don't want to be the first. I mean, so we are quite a premium product, and we would sit at the top in terms of price, which we justify, you know, through quality, through flavour, through packaging. But if and when we do head into a recession and people want to spend less, then one of the things we are doing is we are going through a bit of a rebrand at the moment, looking at the key messages on the front of the boxes, you know, what's important to the consumers. That's changing, and one of the big factors for us is the price point. So we're with Ocado at the moment and 5 wholesalers who have all been really supportive, and the orders have been fairly consistent since lockdown, and they've been very helpful and flexible. But now we're approaching the bigger multiples. We're reaching out to all the major supermarkets and ready, hopefully, for a January listing somewhere. But the price always comes up, and I think this will be a bigger issue for consumers if we do go into a recession. So there are things we can do. When we expand, our prices will go down because of the scales of economy naturally. So that's really helpful. But we're also thinking about ways we can look at our supplies of ingredients without impacting the quality, and what we're doing in terms of our production line, installing a conveyor belt is one of our big plans to reduce our labour costs, and look at the other things that we can do to save money without impacting on the product and the service. So yeah, I guess the bottom line is the big thing we're doing is looking at how we can reduce that price for the consumers, and to help us get into the supermarkets to make it more viable as well. So hopefully everyone will see a price decrease rather than an increase to help everyone still buy quality food that's plant-based.
Lovely. Laura, let's go to you, because I know you were talking about how it's great your sales have increased, and obviously it's particularly in the gifting arena. So in terms of, a potentially anticipated deep recession, again, luxury items, might kind of take a hit. So anything you're doing or thinking about in terms of those kind of long-term strategies?
Yeah, we're looking at items, especially like I said, around the gifting, with lower price points than our current offering. And we're just being really strategic with what we spend and how we spend on now. We keep our teams quite flexible, so kind of just managing the resource that we've got, kind of either dialing up or dialing it down as and when we need it to, so we can keep our overheads as low as possible during these times as well. But it's just really a lot of research, making sure we're investing into areas we only really need to invest into, and making sure as well that we're well stocked, and we don't have to, because we have to place an order for quite a large amount of watches at a time, just making sure that we're well stocked now, so when that does actually hit, we're not having to outlay big costs whilst we're during that, so we can make that return back now to cover us as well. But really it's just kind of managing and just keeping our costs as low as possible, and then trying to introduce something which we're trying to get in for the Christmas market now, lower price point items to suit the current climate that we're in.
Nice. Anyone else want to chime in on that particular question?
Yes, I wouldn't mind chiming in.
Yes, Sue, go ahead.
I think consumers are a lot more savvy these days, and they're looking for value for money, but not just cheap. They basically want the product to be effective. So, for example, the J.R. Liggett's shampoo bar, I mean, this is a price point of $9.99 a bar, but it's the same length of time as you would on average use 3 bottles of liquid shampoo. So they're looking for value and quality combined. And I think this is a big change. They're also a lot more aware of the effect of manufacturing on the planet and on the environment. So 0 waste, no plastic.
Yeah.
It's literally they're considering all different options. So I don't think it is just about price itself.
That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. We've got a couple of other questions. Helen, oops, where's she gone? Helen. Hi, Helen. She said, hi, everyone. It's awesome to hear that so many of you have been using the time during COVID to rethink, analyze, and diversify while pushing ahead with MPD. Do you see this has been a good opportunity for independent brands like ours to gain some traction against the bigger brands that were unable to stay open, keep shipping orders, or operate their supply chains from home? It's an interesting one. Who'd like to?
Shall I say?
Yeah, Adrian.
And it's just a personal,
and then we'll
comments
go to
really here, and sometimes I have to go with those personal comments, which are instinct, and I think there are disruptive brands that come into the market and do very well on the smaller side, but on the other end of the scale, I do feel that the current pandemic, what has allowed to happen is that the larger multinationals are gaining traction with their own brands because of supply chain issues. That's particularly the major retailers may see that they are safer in supply chain issues, keeping shelves fuller. And so I do think that the multiples will come out of this a little bit better than the disruptor brands. The investment that and the cash that these multinationals have they can ride out these kind of storms much better than the smaller brands. So whilst there are a great deal of opportunities to be had, and you know, lots of people are developing and taking advantage of that, I do feel that over the long term we will look back at this and say this was the point where the balance swung very gently and maybe imperceivably, and maybe in the future I may be wrong, but I think we will look back here and say that this was the point where the multinationals really took hold of the major part of the market. And I hate to say it, but I think that's where we will see it. And I'm hoping that, you know, through the development of web-based sales and more direct sales and the strength of the independent market will continue to exist. But I do feel that the teeth are slightly in further for the multinationals.
Rimi and thank you, Adrian. Rimi and Manav, do you agree with? I know you wanted to say something. Do you agree with Adrian or not?
No. I think he's right. I think with the supermarkets, etc., the big brands did very well because everybody knows them. They've got they're available everywhere. Convenience, supermarket, so it was easy for people to buy. But I think if you're a new product now, or because we've got friends, you know, the Booch and Brew, they make kombucha, you know, and they want to, we've you know, they're asking us for some advice, and we've said, look, go for the distributors, because the distributors like Suma, you know, all of that, CLF, Tree of Life, those types of health food distributors in the UK, they need MPD. That's, you know, they have their new catalogues every quarter or every few months that they need to fill with. So the buyers are still open to MPD. So I would definitely, I probably won't go for the supermarkets yet. I'd just go for those independent distributors and just keep targeting and keep pushing, because they're always open to MPD. You know, even like, and with the big, like Waitrose and etc., we see now, like it wasn't March, April, May, June, but from July onwards, they now want to see MPD. You know, so the listings that we've got in September have only come about in the last 30 days. Everything was being very quick. Yeah. You know,
and also, I mean, I don't know what category they're in, but direct to consumer, you know, that would be, you know, a good channel to focus on too.
Yeah, brilliant. No, really good advice. Thank you. I think we probably got time for, because we're getting the wrap up time, we've probably got time for about one more question, which we've got, and that's from, I don't know if it's pronounced Jacob or Jakob. I hope I've pronounced it right. Hey, Katrina, thanks for hosting. You're welcome. Thank you. It's great to see so many vegan businesses thrive in such a difficult period of time. It sounds like the majority of the panelists have gone through investment of some sort. What were the biggest challenges they've faced, and what advice could they offer to a business seeking an investment? Oh, and that's from Jacob is from Citizen Kind. Emma sends her best. Oh, lovely. Citizen Kind is a lovely vegan recruitment company. Thanks. So for those of you now who has had investment, Mini, sorry, I just joined your names up there. Manav and Rimi. Yeah, you've definitely had experience with investment, because like I mentioned earlier, you turned down Dragon's Den, you know, to Deborah Meaden and Tuka. You turned them down and waited. So I think it would be great if you could answer that one.
Again, we were very lucky. We finished our raise with Blue Horizon in November, so we were financially that way secure. But if I was in somebody else's position now, looking at what's happening in the market, valuations have come down because investors have a lot more power at the moment in terms of the market. But I would focus on raising a low figure. I don't know how much they need, but 100 to 200,000 people have still got appetite for. You know, from speaking to other companies that have recently raised on Seeders and Crowdcube, 100, 200 seems to be an okay figure. So I would look for maybe angel investors and people with money, you know, to raise a lower amount, and then maybe get yourself, see where the economy is in 6 months' time, get your business up and running for what you need, and then go and raise bigger or go to the VCs. But if I was in their position now, it would be a low figure just to keep me going, you know, just for cash flow to survive whatever their goal is, or if it's for growth, but definitely a low figure. And it's easier to raise a lower amount, and then you might get a lot more people who want to overfund you, and you might be able to get some more money.
And I think it's definitely positive, you know, to seek investment. You know, for us, I don't think we would have been able to grow and scale to the extent that we have. So, and it's also about finding the right partner. You know, whereas Dragon's Den, it just didn't feel right to move forward with that. Whereas, you know, Blue Horizon you know, we're very aligned, you know, as Tammy was saying, you know, their portfolio is very sustainable, vegan, and, you know, we're all on the same page, we understand each other. But then there's also channels such as, you know, crowdfunding, you know, which are quite successful for, you know, smaller companies as well. And you can get a good higher valuation on these platforms.
But you'll always need those investors offline first.
Yes.
And then get
an
online.
anchor investor, and then you have that loyal following of your consumers.
But it could, from our experience, it took 9 months from speaking to Blue Horizon to getting the money, and that was because of summer and etc. and the due diligence. So
allow that time.
Start now, and it's a full-time job raising money. Probably like everyone.
That's really good advice, actually. I'll just go briefly to Laura, because I know you've also recently had investments. Is there anything you'd quickly like to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think it can be quite a daunting task, and finding the right investors is key. I was always quite skeptical. I think I was a bit naive in the beginning when I launched Votch and thought I could grow it organically. But we have had to change. As I said, we were quite fortunate in the fact that we'd had almost 4 years trading at the time that we went to seek investment. So we had proven traction, and we could demonstrate a growing market. So it's really important that you demonstrate to any key investors your market, how it's growing, and also how it's going to shape out and how you predict it's going to shape out in the current climate. We've had to obviously rejig our figures slightly and put more realistic expectations in than we may have done back in February, March. But yeah, it's really key to just find an investor with kind of relevant expertise. We were really fortunate. Our first investor meeting, we got investment, and we actually brought 2 investors on. The first 2 investor meetings said yes. So for us, the whole turnaround time was actually pretty quick. We saw the money within a couple of weeks. So it can go one of 2 ways. I was expecting and preparing for the worst and preparing for a long slog. But it's just networking, getting out there and just pulling in those resources around you that you know can measure and build and, you know, scale and make your business succeed.
Absolutely. And just on that, I'll just wrap up on that. On my website, veganbusinessmedia.com, there's a blog post called How to Get an Investor for Your Vegan Business. And it's actually a list of vegan and vegan-friendly investors, including the types of things they invest in and how to pitch them. And I've also interviewed quite a few investors on the Vegan Business Talk podcast, so you can check that out, because it's really worth listening, because they each have different ways that they like to be pitched. And it's always good to go in with as much information as you can, rather than just kind of, hey, give me money kind of thing. So that's a great question, I think, and one we're going to have to wrap up on that. But look, thank you so much to everyone. You shared so much really brilliant insights and expertise. You've been really generous with your time and the information that you shared. And I think overall, I mean, I'm certainly getting from this panel certainly a feeling of optimism. I'm loving hearing that, you know, you're all not only surviving, you're thriving, which I think is absolutely wonderful. And obviously we want that to continue. I would hope that once we finish with the live stream panel, I know Joe, One Planet Pizza are exhibiting. Mahi Naturals have got a stall. So do go and check out the exhibitors' stalls, check out the rest of the shows. Some of us might be available for a short period in the chat room if you just go to the chat room for suppliers and manufacturers, there may be 1 or 2 of us able to stay behind and answer any questions that we didn't get to. But I'd just like to thank all of you, Joe, Laura, Sue, Adrian, Rimi and Manav and Tammy. Thank you so much for your time today, for making this a really insightful and excellent panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Lovely to chat.
Thank you so much, Katrina.
Bye everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Well done, Katrina. Thanks ever so much. And thank you all of you for joining us. It's a fantastic panel. As Katrina mentioned, there's plenty more to see at the show. I will just mention before we go, it was a very optimistic panel. I'm aware there's a lot of businesses that have had very different experiences. I get to hear a lot of that working in my role here. My business here, Yayo, suffered a 33% drop-off. That's definitely brought its challenges. And it's difficult to manage. VegFest is part of the 100% Club, and like nearly all events right now, we've gone through 100% drop-off, and that's lasted 4 months. we, as an events company, are extremely lucky to have this little lifeline of an online option. We hope that lasts. But for all of those who are suffering that kind of drop-off, I do hope you can access the help that's available. I hope you can find the right sources of help, and that there are people out there who are doing really well, who will be able to help you too, maybe. And I hope that we see this global vegan community look after their own, because I know from where I'm sat, there's a lot who need it. But on that note, again, I'll say thank you very much for joining. And the next panel, which is coming up, will be independent retailers. And I think all of us here would want to express a huge gratitude for the independent retailers, the frontline workers who've been keeping us going. On that note too, all the suppliers who've been facing those challenges, who've kept our businesses going. Well done, thank you. And I hope you find some of these sessions valuable. I certainly have. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I've just saw it before we cut off. I've just seen a message that Manav and Rimi have just said if anyone wants to talk further to them, you can contact them directly and they're happy to help. So thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you again, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.